Hello and welcome to the Evidence Based Chiropractor. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Langmaid, and today we are talking research, dynamic versus static stretching, warm-up, the effect on power and agility performance. If you're listening to this is probably a question that you get asked weekly about stretching, warm-ups in your practice. We're going to dive pretty deep into a research article that was published in 2006 by the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, and it is a good one, and it has a lot of valuable and practical information to help you guide your patients and to also help you for yourself. Additionally, Adjust Your Marketing, my live intensive immersion event is coming up June 7, 8, 9 here in Tampa, Florida. We're going to build your marketing strategy. We're going to start implementing it. We are creating content on the spot, things you can take home with you and get going and step up your practice, step up your marketing in a way that you can be proud of this year and in subsequent years as well. We have one super early bird ticket left. So last call on the super early bird tickets. If you want to pick that up, you can get 65% off the standard ticket price if you are the last one to grab it. And you can pick it up at the evidencebasedchiropractor.com/events. Again, that is the evidencebasedchiropractor.com/events. As I said at the top, today we are talking dynamic versus static stretching. This paper is titled, as I said, Dynamic versus Static Stretching Warm-Up, the Effect on Power and Agility Performance. So the researchers first started by taking a look at research past, so to speak, and they found or said, quote, Smith indicated that the general purpose of a pre-exercise warm-up is to increase muscle and tendon suppleness, to stimulate blood flow to the periphery, to increase body temperature, and to enhance free coordinated movement. I could not agree more, and I probably couldn't say it better myself, which is why I just utilized that quote. We all know, really, warm-up is key to injury prevention. Warm-up, cool down. These are very, very key factors, and when you look at high-end athletics, we tend to see the warm-up and the cool down exaggerated, meaning the higher you go, the further you go with your athletic career, the more emphasis is placed on warm-up and cool down. Now, some of this comes just from habit of coaches, athletic trainers, but research like this is really cool because it showcases that there actually is science behind it. So it's not just habit. It's not just somebody told somebody else that it'd be a good thing to do. That might be how it started, but now the research is backing that up. So when we talk about dynamic warm-ups, there's a couple things to keep in mind. The goal, or really, what's been shown with dynamic warm-ups historically is really the goal of doing it is to improve knee joint position sense, to increase oxygen uptake, to lower lactate concentration, and to raise blood pH, to improve the efficiency of thermoregulation, and to improve performance. So those are some of the things that have been, again, looked at in the past relative specifically to dynamic warm-up. And this research publication really highlights the fact that a dynamic warm-up, quite frankly, just has gains over no warm-up at all and over static warm-up as well. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, great, sounds cool, but what's the difference? What activities constitute a dynamic warm-up? What constitutes a static stretching warm-up? So there's quite a few. I'm going to list them all there. I'm warning you, there are quite a few. But with the dynamic warm-up, they talked about performing 10 repetitions of each exercise. That was a bend and reach, a rear lunge and reach, turn and reach, a squat, rower, power jump, prone row, push-up, windmill, diagonal lunge, and reach. So those were the calisthenic exercises, they called them, as part of the dynamic warm-up. Now you can see there's a lot there, but when you think about just the movements themselves, they can be done relatively quickly. There was a couple movement drills also included in the dynamic warm-up. Those movement drills were verticals, laterals, crossovers, skips, and shuttle sprints. So again, probably nothing that's out of the realm of possibility, nothing that really requires, any specialized equipment, which is also advantageous, right? Especially if you're treating a lot of, weekend warriors or wannabe athletes or kids, not having to get into crazy, crazy apparatus is a good thing, right? It's much more likely, reduces friction, much more likely that they'll do it. So I'm going to repeat those dynamic warm-up exercises and movement drills one more time. Bend and reach, rear lunge and reach, turn and reach, squat, rower, power jump, prone row, push-up, windmill, diagonal, lunge, and reach. And those movement drills, pretty straight up, verticals, laterals, crossovers, skip, and shuttle sprint. So there's a lot there, but really it shouldn't take more than 5 to 10 minutes to do all those. Now, let's look at the static stretching. So if that's the dynamic, let's take a look at what they constituted as a normal static stretching warm-up. This included overhead arm pull, turn and reach, rear lunge and reach, hamstring stretch, calf stretch, quadricep stretch, posterior hip stretch, trunk flexion extension stretch, 5-step jump, T-drill, and a medicine ball throw. So those were more of the static stretching. Actually, scratch that 5-step jump, T-drill, and medicine ball throw. The static stretch warm-up were overhead arm pulls, turn and reach, rear lunge and reach, hamstring stretch, calf stretch, quadricep stretch, posterior hip stretch, trunk flexion extension stretch. Wow, if you stuck with me through all that, I give you a lot of credit. There was a lot of stuff there. But I wanted to frame exactly what they were so you didn't have any questions on that. If you want to dive in, as always, this research article will be in the show notes so you can click through there. But let's start talking about, now that we know what they did, and there was a lot of it, let's start talking about what these researchers found. So they found, here's one quote for you. They found, quote, results indicate that the dynamic warm-up conferred a modest performance enhancement for all 3 measures of power and agility relative to the static or no warm-up. These results are consistent with Bishop's review of the literature, indicating that an active warm-up of moderate intensity is likely to significantly improve short-term performance on a range of tasks as long as fatigue is not induced. So that's a key component here. When you start to talk about dynamic warm-ups, with maybe your patients, maybe you're thinking about even for yourself, it's not about getting to that fatigue point. When their fatigue comes in on the warm-up side, performance will suffer. That's what the research has shown. But if you can get warmed up and dynamically and not hit that fatigue, you are very likely going to see performance enhancements. So how does this all play out? Well, there's a couple things. There's at least 2 theories on why pre-exercise stretching might decrease subsequent performance relative to the dynamic warm-up. First is neural activation by repeated stretches. And that really correlates to the motor units available for contraction. So it seems as though with static stretching, there's almost a negative correlation there, and that can inhibit performance. If the static warm-up reduces neural activation relative to the dynamic, performance and agility tasks might be diminished. Again, if you're not able to recruit the muscle fibers necessary, if you're not able to recruit the motor units necessary, there's very likely going to be a diminishment in performance. Dynamic stretching doesn't seem to have that negative side effect, so to speak. So let's take a look at one more quote from these researchers. It's a paragraph, but it really frames the entire thing. So the researchers found, quote, for tasks requiring power and agility, the results suggest that a dynamic warm-up might offer performance benefits not found with static stretching or no warm-up. It is likely that a dynamic warm-up similar to that used in this study will achieve general warm-up goals without invoking the mechanical and neural activation drawbacks associated with acute static stretching. For tasks demanding a high degree of flexibility, power, and agility, warm-up activities should be sequenced, so static stretching, if desired, is followed by dynamic progressive movements that mimic the goal activity without inducing fatigue. So that really puts it all together, right? When we look at dynamic stretching, there's none of the negative side effects, performance side effects, let's say, that are typically associated with static stretching. So you're already starting out at a good point. And what they're seeing is actually not only do you minimize or negate all of those negative side effects in performance, but you actually enhance the ability to have power and agility with your performance because, again, very key part of that last statement, progressive movements that mimic the goal activity. So mimicking the goal activity, dynamically stretching by utilizing the final activity or working around that activity, very, very important. And again, why? Well, we look back to what they said earlier in the article, right? Increasing blood flow to the area, increasing flexibility, very, very important. But do not get to that fatigue point. You do not want to induce fatigue to get those benefits. When you induce fatigue, now you start to come up against those what I'll call negative side effects on performance that would also be seen if you just would have stretched statically. So That was a lot of information, quite a few lists there, especially talking about the dynamic and the static stretching. I can speak for myself. I'm a runner. I probably run 4 to 5 times per week, a couple miles each time. And I static stretched for years and years and years. And just a couple of months ago, I started to do dynamic stretching. And I'll tell you, it's made my workouts easier, and I've noticed less issues. I've never had huge issues with my knees, knock on wood, but I was having a little bit of trouble with one of my knees. And since I started dynamically stretching, it might be just coincidence, but I haven't had that be a challenge. So if you have patients, I think the take-home message from this paper is if you have patients that are asking you about stretching, I would highly encourage them to include dynamic stretching in their warm-up. If you have somebody getting back to activity after time off, you have, let's say, golfer getting back after hurting low back or something of that nature, doing dynamic stretching prior to that activity is probably a really good idea for that individual, not only for injury prevention, but also really for performance enhancement. Now, you're not going to tell them that, dynamic stretching is going to shave 3 strokes off their game anytime soon, but getting them back to the level that they're performing, the level they expect to perform at, is a great thing for you in your practice, especially if you're the person that helped guide them to that point. They're going to associate you and the information you gave them with those positive gains, and that's an awesome place to be. When you can help the people in your community, obviously that's what it's all about, right? Help people reach their goals and expectations. That's what it's all about. That's what this episode was all about. And again, if you want to step up your marketing, I'd invite you, grab that last super early bird ticket. You can pick it up at the evidence-based chiropractor.com/events. I'm super pumped for this live immersion event. I've been building up to it for probably a year or two. I've gotten so many questions about people asking if I can help them grow their practice. This is the opportunity to do so. Check it all out at the evidence-based chiropractor.com/events. And I hope you have a great week in practice, and I'll talk to you soon.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of the Evidence Based Chiropractor. Learn more tips for explosive practice development at the evidencebasedchiropractor.com. You can also join the Premier MD monthly membership, enabling you to use what you just heard to maximize results in your office.